Hello again. I'm here to present more instances of the tomato glitch that appears on Amanda's 3DS XL. Once again, I'd just like to clarify, this issue is not caused by the Smash 3DS cartridge itself. I've used multiple different cartridges in multiple different 3DSs, multiple different memory cards. I have formatted, reset to factory settings, deleted all save data. This issue only occurs on this specific 3DS XL with the Smash Bros. 1.0.4 update installed. This video will be highlighting each item in the game and exactly how the tomato glitch affects it. We'll go ahead and start with the Maxim Tomato, which, as you can see, looks as it should and functions just as it should. Next, we have a heart container, and the heart container appears as a Maxim Tomato. We'll go ahead and pick it up, and it heals us as normal. The fairy bottle is next, appears as a tomato. You can see it does have a soft glow to it. I assume that's the fairy trapped inside the tomato. When you pick it up, since I have no damage right now, it's not really going to do anything. But if I were damaged above 100%, it would heal me just as the item should. Next we have the super mushroom, which as you can see spawns as a tomato, but effectively works just fine. You still grow to super size. And then we have the poison mushroom, which also spawns as a tomato, and also works just as it should. Next item we have is the warp star, which spawns as a spinning tomato on its side. And if we pick it up and give it a go, it works just as the warp star should. We have the superstar, which is a bouncing glowing tomato, and if picked up by a player, still grants invincibility. The next item was highly requested by people. It is the metal box. And when spawned, the metal box does appear as a tomato. But when you equip it, it works exactly as it should. Your movement slows down, your jump height decreases, and you get the metal texture. The bunny hood, however, kind of sinks into the ground as a tomato, and when picked up, instead of bunny ears, you get a tomato for a head. Next up, we have the super spicy curry, which functions just fine. Following that, we have the timer stopwatch, which when equipped will slow down time as normal. We have the lightning, which will successfully shrink down your opponents. Now this one's a little bit interesting. This giant tomato here is the bullet bill item, and when equipped and used, you don't actually go anywhere. I'll go ahead and show that one more time. As you can see, Little Mac just kind of stays put as a tomato, and then has the spinning animation as if he had just been a bullet. Next up, we have the beam sword, which is definitely interesting. When it's equipped and held in your hand, it actually grows just as you would expect it to when you use it, but because it's loading the model of the tomato, that makes it a giant tomato. Next is Lipstick, the little flower wand that when you hit an opponent with it, they begin taking damage, but the flower on their head is replaced by a tomato. We have the Star Rod from the Kirby series, which I thought might spawn a tomato when you shoot it, but it's just a regular star, so it's kind of strange that this particular item works correctly. Next is another interesting case. We have the Fire Bar, which the handle is a tomato, but the fireballs that make up the body of the Fire Bar are normal. So I'm not too sure exactly why that is the case. Then again, I'm not too sure exactly why anything about this glitch is anything. The next item we have is the Ore Club, which is a tomato floating a little bit higher up in the air. And when swung, it successfully creates tornadoes just as it should. Next we have the hammer. And when you pick it up, you swing it around as if it were a hammer, but you look like an idiot swinging around a tomato. We have the home run bat, which once again functions just fine. However, its range has been reduced because the model of the tomato is now the range of the bat. We have the golden hammer, which once again, you can still float through the air while using it, but you just look like an idiot swinging a tomato around. We have the super scope, and the super scope still fires just fine. I don't know if Little Mac thinks he looks cool holding a tomato like it's a gun. Speaking of which, the ray gun also works fine. It's a tomato that shoots lasers. Next we have the fire flower. The fire flower is another interesting case in that because he holds the tomato at an angle, when you spit the fire shoots straight up when he corrects the tomato. So rather than going forward, you just shoot fire straight up in the air. Next we have the drill item, which when you fire it, shows the drill and then the handle as well. Let's go ahead and see, get Little Mac to get behind Toon Link. Fire that way, and as he's being pushed by the drill tomato. Next up we have the gust bellows, which when held, the range of the gust bellows is drastically reduced. It only has about the width of Little Mac worth of pushing force. One thing that is interesting though is that when it's tossed on the ground, it just kind of scoots along, pushing itself to the right. Next we have the steel diver, which I showcased in the last video. Instead of shooting small torpedoes, it shoots small tomatoes. Go ahead and get as close as we can here just so you can see it. No, there they are, tiny tomato torpedoes. Next up we have a bomb, which if we just stay still, he'll probably do his thing. We'll go ahead and spawn him further out this way. And there he goes, chugging along until he hits something and explodes. We have the motion sensing bomb, which when you put down just digs itself into the ground. And we'll go ahead and have Toon Link walk into it here, and it explodes as you'd expect. We have the gooey bomb, which will stick to you just fine and explode. The smart bomb from the Star Fox series works just fine, minus the fact that it appears to be a tomato. The bomb shoes from Legend of Zelda. They crawl along just fine. And we have the X-Bomb. Now the X-Bomb is a little bit strange because sometimes it will work and sometimes it won't. We'll go ahead and toss it here. The tomato makes a little cross, and that time it did work for us. Other times, however, it'll play the sound of the explosion, but not actually the image of the explosion. Next we have the Hocotate bomb from Pikmin, which if we just set it on the ground is a tomato. It'll then fly up into the air, and then after a few seconds it comes crashing down just as you'd expect it to. This big tomato here is the Deku Nut, which if we were to throw at Toon Link will stun him. And this little crawling tomato here is Freezy. And let's go ahead and get Little Mac from a different angle. There we go, now he's frozen. We have the Smoke Ball tomato, which works just fine. I'll go to reset here just because the smoke bomb takes a little bit. We have the Pitfall item, which, although it appears to be a tomato, will sink you into the ground. We have the Hot Head, which you can still beat it up to increase its power, and then launch it, and it will just crawl around the edge of the stage just like you'd expect it to. Let's see if it'll come around this side. No, I guess not. I'll launch another one there just for good measure. Next we have Mr. Saturn, and he will walk around like he normally does. He will break shields, as you'd expect him to. His tumbling animation is a little bit strange as a tomato. Next we have the green shell, and the green shell spins around on the ground as it flies along, and you can actually see here that it is spinning. We have the banana peel, which if we get Toon Link to walk on it here, he will trip. We have the bumper, which is pretty interesting because the different states of the bumper all show different angles of the tomato. So here we see it's kind of tilted forward towards us. If we launch it, it gets stuck on the ground normally, but then when we hit it, it actually rotates. And if we were to get another one and just throw it out, as you can see, this one is actually tilted towards us, and when we hit this one, it actually turns upside down. So there's definitely something with the way the models for the items are spawning. This tomato is a spring, and there it is bouncing along. If we jump on it, we get some serious air. Next we have the Unaira, the spiny urchin, which when we throw it down, it will puff up just like you expect, and we'll have Link walk into it, and he does take damage. Next up is the soccer ball. If you attack it, it sets on fire and launches, just like it always does. And then a new one will spawn once the first one leaves the stage. There it is. Go ahead and reset, just so we don't keep having soccer balls in the screen. Next item is the team healer. Can't really show its effectiveness here, but it's a tomato. Next we have the POW block, which functions just as you'd expect it to. You get 3 shots at it. It doesn't actually squish or change its form the way some of the other items would, and you may expect the tomato to. This is a spiny shell, and so we'll go ahead and throw it. It'll spin above its target before smashing down into them. Next we have the boomerang, which the actual model appears as a tomato, but when it's thrown, you can see the ghost image of the boomerang trailing behind it. Here's another interesting item. We have the beetle, which when thrown will grab hold and raise you off the stage. Here we have the Cuckoo again, a little sideways tomato walking around. We'll go ahead and suffer its wrath just to show on video that it summons several tomatoes to attack, just as you would expect the Cuckoo to do. Here we have the beehive, which as much as I know you want it to spawn tiny little bees in the shape of tomatoes, they are just tiny little bees. This next item is a bit interesting. This is the Killer Eye. This is the turret from Kid Icarus. And as you can see there, it was standing kind of diagonally slanted. It shoots out of the right side, so when thrown, it'll actually knock itself over because it can't stand up. Next we have Boss Galaga, which when thrown does his loop-de-loop, goes up high, and then beams down to abduct whoever he finds. Coming up here, this is the Franklin badge, which when equipped, you have a little sparkly tomato. Here is the back shield, which is a tomato that follows you. Let's go ahead and wait for that Franklin badge to wear off so we can replace it with the Screw Attack badge. There we go. And here we have the Screw Attack badge once again, equipped like a little chastity belt, and the item functions just fine. Next up is another favorite of mine. We have the Super Leaf, which when spawned, rather than giving you a tanuki tail and tanuki ears, you get a tomato tail and a tomato head. So there he is wiggling his little tomato around. Coming up here pretty close on the end of the items, we have the rocket belt, which when equipped is an actual jetpack tomato. And you'll notice that the tomato's orientation is now on its side, and so because the jets from the rocket are supposed to come from the bottom of the rocket, they come from the bottom of the tomato and are shooting out to the left behind Little Mac, as opposed to shooting down beneath him. Here we have the special flag, which when held shows him proudly hoisting his victorious tomato for that extra stock. Here we have the legendary Smash tomato, which still functions just fine. Gigamac works just as you'd expect him to, and all the other final smashes are in no way affected by the fact that the Smash Ball is now a tomato. Now, the following three items I'm not going to show an example of until the very end. That would be the Assist Trophy, the Pokeball, and the Master Ball. These are the items that actually crash the game when used. So if we were to use one of them, as soon as it opens up, the game freezes and crashes. Instead, we will show a couple items that contain other items, such as the capsule here, which contained some other item there. Here we have a rolling crate, so we'll go and give that a toss, and there it goes. Here we have the party ball. And there we go, cracked open with some confetti. Let's go ahead and spawn this barrel. And the barrel rolls just as you expect it to roll. Now, probably the two of my favorite items here would be Daybreak, which I will spawn the 3 pieces of Daybreak. This one's interesting because when he's holding the Daybreak gun, you can't actually see it. And when you launch the attack, nothing actually happens. It's just the animation, but not the animation of the weapon itself. Finally here, we have the 3 parts of Dragoon, which when equipped, show him riding on the tomato. Your targeting crosshair is a tomato, and when Little Mac attacks you, he is surfing on a tomato. Now that we've gone through all of the items there, we'll go ahead and crash the game just so you can see what happens. This will be a Master Ball. We will pick it up, and when we go to summon a Pokemon... Oh, that one actually bounced off and fell off the stage. When we go to summon a Pokemon, that is when the game freezes, crashes after a few seconds, and I have to restart it. I'll go ahead and post another video of specific characters that have been affected by this glitch, so be sure to see that one as well.